was sat there and I was thinking about complex PTSD is a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder that you get from, it often comes from childhood, but not necessarily, that you get from being in a very demanding, very abusive environment where contrary injunctions are thrown at you regularly under the threat of some kind of sanction or pain. Basically, it's highly stressful and it traumatises the person, traumatises the system, but it's not based on any one particular thing that you can point out, so we call it complex. We say it's complex. And one of the things that came across my radar was the concept of toxic shame. There are 2 exercises that you can do. So the 2 tips that I would give you in terms of principle are: create a compassionate dialogue about the event. So that could mean literally talking to a therapist or a coach or a counsellor and talking through the events. And the other thing is any kind of externalization. You could say, well, talking to a therapist or a coach is externalization, and you'd be right. Journaling is also an externalization, and so is doing exercises where you speak out loud. So those are 2 tips in principle form for how to deal with toxic shame: externalize and engage in compassionate dialogue. There are 2 exercises that I describe in the blog post below. The first one, basically, is you go to a shaming experience from childhood, you write what the experience was, and then you write down what you wish somebody had said to you right after that shaming experience had occurred. And then what you do is you imagine an authority figure or somebody whose opinion you respect actually saying that to you. The second exercise that you can do, there's another way of creating a dialogue. The parts of ourselves that we need to create a dialogue with are the person that you were when you experienced that toxic, shaming, abusive trauma, and the other person we need to talk to is the abuser. How do I do that? Why would I do that? You've internalized the abuser. You've internalized the abuse. Most likely, if you're carrying this and it's a problem for you and you're getting emotional flashbacks of where you feel overwhelmed with toxic shame, you're carrying that abuse around with you. So you're carrying the shaming voice around with you that keeps you trauma bound, that keeps you limited, that keeps you frightened. The effects of being trauma bonded, of being shame bound, and of trauma bonded to feelings of shame are you will have a tendency towards codependency, tendency towards porous ego boundary, tendencies towards people pleaser syndrome, tendencies to be fearful of intimacy, a tendency basically towards emotional dysregulation. Hopefully you find that useful. Externalize, create compassionate dialogue, and have a go at those 2 exercises. One is where you actually create a dialogue with the shaming voice and you externalize it. And then you've got the other exercise where you actually go back to a specific incident, allow yourself to reparent, to be the parent, to be the parental figure in that scenario, and come along and say, okay, here is some kind of moral guidance, here is some kind of moral structure. They shouldn't have said that to you, they shouldn't have done that to you, what they just told you there wasn't true. All of that can actually be very, very helpful and can do a lot of really, really good healing work very, very quickly.